Hello, everybody. My name is Jaime Pereña. I'm Director of AI and Innovation at Microsoft, and it's my pleasure being with you today. We're going to be discussing today how companies and organizations can be successful in adopting AI and sorting out the challenges and difficulties and being very successful. Let me start the presentation. So before we start, I'm going to start explaining to you which are the top 3 areas in which Microsoft is investing on AI. So for us, the key 3 pillars are first, making sure that we're doing a meaningful innovation, that we're empowering people, and we do it with responsibility. And these 3 things are not just pure marketing or sales pitch. It's just really how we look at investment. This is how we look at prioritization. So we need to make sure that all this technology that we are creating is a technology that's applicable, that is helping people and is empowering people. And we do this with taking into account an ethical approach and according to our principles. So let me deep dive and understand a little bit more what we mean about this meaningful innovation. But for us, when we look at this, what's going on in the last few years in the market, there's been a huge accelerating of AI innovation. And this is due mainly to 3 factors. There's the amount of compute power that we have now is certainly not comparable with the amount of compute power that we had 3 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, right? It's growing exponentially, especially with the cloud. Second is the amount of data, which is also growing exponentially. The amount of data that we have in the past is not comparable at all with the amount of information that we have now, right? These 2 ingredients are absolutely key to do good AI models. But the 3rd ingredient, which is a huge advancement on the algorithms, is providing that AI is achieving, as you can see on the screen, some very significant milestones. For example, in 2016, Microsoft reached what we understand as object recognition human parity, right? And we have achieved human parity across a variety of disciplines. This doesn't mean that we have an AI that is capable of acting as a human in a general way. It means that in very specific tasks, AI has acquired capabilities that are comparable to human beings. But the good news, right, is that this technology is not hidden into a laboratory. This technology is now also widely available. And we see, for example, more than 1.3 million developers using our cognitive services. We see more than 30 million people using our bot service. You can see billions of pages being indexed with this AI technology, and so on. You can see also the translation in real time, which you probably will see that it's not 100% perfect, as none of these things are 100% perfect. But for me, not knowing how to speak Portuguese, and I cannot have this translated in 60 languages right now as I speak, right? Let me give you one example. So this is one example of the task that we need to overcome in order to get this recognition as human parity on language understanding. All these tests are standard tests in the market. Some of them are Microsoft driven, but others are, for example, Stanford driven. So it's not something that Microsoft has invented. It's not Microsoft saying, oh yeah, we have achieved this parity. One of these tests is very interesting. This Winograde NLI. It's try to check if the artificial intelligence is capable of doing things that are very human in nature, which is understanding the language based on the context. What you see on the screen is a question that was part of that test that the AI was able to answer successfully, right? So the question here is who is they? Right, and in this sentence, when we think about the context, right, when we see that the council refused the demonstrators a permit because they advocated violence, for us as human beings, it's clear that we're talking about the demonstrators, right? But this is just is context-based. It's not logic. It's not grammar, because if you just change one word, and that's what the test becomes very tricky. They change the word advocated, but the word fear. Right? We see that the answer changes completely, right? And we know that because of the context. And the AI in this case was capable of changing the response and finding that they has changed on that context, right? These are some examples. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a demo and show you how these technologies are landing in real organizational scenarios, right? Can it shift? So imagine for a moment that you own a small company that provides all kinds of supplies for swimming pools. For example, you provide covers, filters, chemicals, all these kind of elements. And you want to open a new store, right? And you say, okay, where would be the right place to open a new store? Well, the right place to open a new store will be a place in which there are a lot of swimming pools, but you don't have customers. In this case, this company didn't have that information. So they went to public data sources. In this case, World Maps. This is Bing Maps. And they have trained what we call a deep learning model to find swimming pools. Right? So deep learning is like our humans learn. And deep learning is a way to, you learn by looking at, we learn what a car is, for example, when we go on the street and our parents are telling, oh, look, this is a car, this is a car, this is a car. And then we say, oh, is that a car? And then, no, it's a truck. And so we learn by being exposed to a lot of instances of repetitions, right? So in a way, this is similar to that. In this case, what you can see are different regions, and the model is capable of finding and recognizing swimming pools, right? But not only that, because I know data from this region, I can also see that there's no much interest for me, because there is no, even though I don't have much market share, there is no much buyer propensity. But I can look at, for example, different areas, and I can see they're way more interesting, right? So, and you see how the deep learning model is capable of finding a lot of pools, and it's doing a good job. So, for example, it's not being confused by basketball court, but it's not perfect. You see, it was missing this. But as you can see, it's capable of doing a fantastic job with finding those things. But not only that, because we know which are the addresses, we can see which are the existing customers and which are the new customers. So I can do some projections, right? So this is an example of a business development person using a deep learning model without really knowing what is the technology behind it, right? It's AI in real life. But because this is a very smart company, what this person can do right now is can take all this information and send it over to the marketing people, that they can actually load this into the tool that they use every day. They can load it in a tool like Excel, right? And then they can get a tab with all the new leads. So we can have all the information that's coming from the website, the new leads, or we can also have the information about the existing customers. And we can mix that information with public information about average yearly income, average children, which we don't know the exact data of that particular ID, but we can do that information. What I'm going to show you here, this is an Azure Machine Learning add-on working on Excel. And what I'm going to do right now is, from a marketing perspective, without really knowing much about machine learning, I'm going to try to score the probability of success with these customers. In order to do that, I'm going to pick a buyer propensity model. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the data from the spreadsheet, and I'm going to use this as an input for the machine learning model. And I'm going to say that I want the answer of the machine learning model on T3, and I'm going to predict which is the outcome. What you have seen right now is I'm taking this data and uploading this data to the cloud, to Azure, running that data against a machine learning model that has been trained on scoring probability of success with the customer, and I'm getting automatically the results, right? And so, for example, I have this 49%, which is telling me that this customer with this price, we won't be able to succeed probably. But for example, what if I change slightly and offer a discount to this customer, and I predict the outcome of the probability, say, now we have some more chances to be successful with this customer. This is a real life example of how also another department, a marketing department, can use AI in real life. But going back to this company web page, I can show you quickly a couple of additional scenarios. Okay, so for example, I can, in this case, we're going to see the customer advocacy tools that this Smart and Pool company has. In this case, what you see is negative tweets. So I'm looking and monitoring tweets that are negative, and I'm using something that's called cognitive services, sentiment analysis, to identify which are the tweets that are negative. And for example, this tweet, okay, what I'm trying to do is identify which is the customer. I'm looking at the picture that has posted, and this customer is complaining about that lately her pool is always dirty and green and has algae, right? So an automatically AI is going to try to help me understanding the possible answers, the possible causes, right? But I'm not really sure. So what's behind this thing is the following. So this is the tweet that the customer has sent. Behind this thing, what you see is here's all the unstructured information that this company has, all the user manuals, all the documentation, everything, right? And we have used AI tools and these language understanding tools to extract the information from there and create a knowledge base. So you see that probably customer algae is related to accidental damage. And if I look at accidental damage, I can actually look at where in all these user manuals we're talking about accidental damage, and we can see what the problems could be, and we can give and help the customer solving the problems, right? Another potential scenario is all the conversational AI. So we've seen the deep learning, we've seen machine learning, we've seen knowledge mining and intelligent search. So we can also have a conversation. We can create for a field service agent, for this person that goes visiting the customers. We can have a bot that can ask questions and say, hey, I want to close this work order. I can talk to the bot. The one is helping me reporting. I can ask if there's anything I can do with this customer. And it's giving me information about things that the customer might need, that, for example, change or replace a filter. And I can have conversation with the customer. I can even with the bot, and can even ask the bot things like, "What should I do now?" So is actually finding my location, which is actually you all know where I live right now, and I can say yes, this is where I'm right now, and it's going to find which is the closest customer that to my location. Right, and it can send me directions so I can go to the closer customer to that, right? So you see a bit of another example of how I can use these tools in everyday life. However, I was saying that Microsoft's second pillar is how we empower people. The issue here is that we see a huge gap between actions and expectations. So when I'm showing these things, or where people see this technology and immediately creates an immediate appetite to use this great AI, but we see companies are having significant challenges to adopt this technology. And why is this happening? When we look at, this is data from Gartner, our partner, and you see the companies are afraid of AI. They're afraid of the security. They don't understand how to value the investments. They they don't fully understand what it is. They don't know where to start. They don't know really what are the right use cases they should be using, how they or even what are the right vendors, technologies that they can use. So we see a bit of progress there. So we created, it's called AI Business School, to help our customers going through this journey. So I'm going to first start with showing with you what our learnings on how to just be thinking about AI strategically, right? I'm going to start with one example. Okay, this is a company, which is a very interesting company that they have an e-commerce model based on subscription, very modern and new way of thinking. Right. What's very interesting from this company, right? They decided to open physical stores, and the reason they decided to open physical stores is because in this model that they have, AI and being able to anticipate what customers' demand is critical. And for example, they in this subscription model, they send the customers different leggings, and they want to avoid customers returning those leggings. They want customers happy with that. But they were missing a lot of data for this model, so they opened the physical store with a big focus on capturing information. That is strategic, right? I always ask a couple of questions to our customers. So, for example, I ask about why Google has acquired Fitbit, or is acquiring Fitbit. Most of you will immediately say because of the data, right? And then I will ask you, okay, what are you doing differently because of the data, because of AI? And then not everybody has a good response in order to do that. So that's why it's easier to see the strategy on the others. It's difficult to see the strategy in ourselves. That's what we've been working and understanding what's going on. And the first thing that we see is that companies need a holistic strategy. Right? Companies have a very siloed approach. They are investing on AI, but they're doing AI in a way that is just for focus on very small scenarios and not thinking the implications worldwide in a holistic way for the company. The second thing is companies are really struggling, as I was showing before, to understand, okay, how do I prioritize AI investments? How should I be looking at those AI investments? So we work with Professor Peter Samsky from INSEAD Business School to embed a model into our thinking. Right? It's a simple model, but it's a very powerful model. And if you're already using any strategy model, any valuation model, just go and use whatever you're using. But if not, this can really help you doing this thing. So it's all based on understanding the value creation from the AI project. And every AI project will have opportunities to lower costs or increase costs, to lower the willingness to pay to the customer, increase the willingness to pay to the customers. And you need to look that into the three bubbles. One, which is the industry environment. So a use case that could be fantastic for you. For example, if I'm in the video on demand industry, providing personalization could be a fantastic use case. But when I look at the industry, I will see that most of my competitors already do this. There's certainly not a value proposition or efficiency value proposition on that, right? They also need to look at your organizational and execution capabilities. You might think that doing a project if you're an insurance company to understand which are the good drivers sounds like a very promising AI project. You're able to identify upfront which are those good drivers. However, the amount of data that you have and insurance company have is mainly focused on those bad drivers, because it's data that is mainly based on claims. So your ability to find those good customers is non-existent. You need to capture that data that is missing, right? And then put all these pieces together and understand the value creation. Because, for example, if you're in a manufacturing environment and predictive maintenance could be a fantastic use case, but only if you have already invested in modernizing your equipment. Because if you need to modernize all your equipment in order to predictive maintenance, then the cost of doing that could be much higher. You still need to do the analysis and understand what is the potential value creation, but those are the things. So this is a simple framework model, but you can apply to all your thinking and prioritization. The other reflection that we have is the following. We see a lot of companies thinking about AI as an incubation in mode, right? So they test it in a lab, they test it with some simple things, right? But we see a lot of companies and organizations struggling to move AI to revenue streams and cost centers. What we think could be an interesting or different approach, right, is the following. It's thinking about, instead of this traditional way to look at the business, think about it as a role for these technical teams and incubation teams to analyze the existing applications and bring AI to all those existing applications, right? But then look at your business processes and your revenue streams and think about how can AI transform those business processes. And finally, when you move into the cost centers, so think about it for finance, HR, for customer service, how AI can empower every employee. It's a simple framework. It seems naive, but it's actually very powerful. And we see some very good discussions with customers thinking about, okay, I see how can I think about more strategically about what I'm doing when I think about, instead of cutting 5% of the cost, is empowering 95% of the people in my organization with AI, right? Let me share with you one case study. This is Publicis, a very interesting company. It's a media and advertisement company, one of the top media and advertisement companies traditionally. It's a company that has grown by merchant acquisition mainly. Buying and acquiring multiple agencies all over the world. And they have an amazing asset of 80,000 employees worldwide. However, they're facing fierce competition because all the marketing budget and media budget from customers is changing significantly, right? So traditionally, they will spend most of the budget with these companies, but now they go to new players, internet players, Facebook to Google, Microsoft, to spend some of those dollars. So how a company like this can still be relevant? Well, one of the key assets that they have is all this amount of data, campaigns, videos, all this amazing assets that they have created, and all the talent that they have across the organization. But it's very hard to leverage that. For example, if I have a customer in Brazil that wants to do a campaign for a beer company, and this customer, this beer company, asks questions like, yeah, I want to see if you have done any campaign in another country that with small people, young people in a nice environment with calm music, and that has been successful in YouTube. That is very hard, because then the people in Brazil in Publicis will need to contact people in the Netherlands. Have you done something like this with Heineken, or in Australia with Coors? And it's not a consistent way to do this. So they turn into AI, and they look at AI as a strategic way to change that. And what they did with AI is using these cognitive tools and these capabilities to create what they call Marcel, which is an assistant that allows them to ask this kind of questions and query. And Marcel is indexing and looking at using these AI capabilities to look at all the existing assets and putting people in touch. So someone in Brazil can go into the bot and ask Marcel, hey, can you help me finding someone that has created a video successful on YouTube with these characteristics, right? So that's how they take all this amazing knowledge that is embedded into the organization and can put it in the hands of every employee and therefore in the hands of every customer. That's an example of real strategic thinking. Just to wrap up the strategy, I would say our learnings is think about, be conscious of your maturity, be conscious of the value that AI can provide, and select this right use case that is according to your capabilities, but is going to demonstrate value. Because that will help you cleaning your data, bringing your right data, creating the right skills, the right abilities into the organization. That will help you thinking about modernizing some of these key business processes. Because when you are successful transforming these business processes, then is when you start building this trust and changing the culture that is needed into the organization. And when you all have that credibility, is the perfect time to think about how you bring AI to every employee and how you start creating new products and new services. But all this together should be part of a holistic strategy, because that starting with this right use case, you need to be thinking about how you're going to be influencing all those things, because you know in the direction that you're going to go with this holistic strategy. Well, I hope this was helpful. I'm going to do now is going to shift gears and go to culture and share with you what are our learnings and what it takes to successfully adopt AI from the organizational perspective. After analyzing multiple customers and projects, there are 3 attributes that we think makes culture AI ready. First, an organization needs to be data-driven. By data-driven, we mean an organization that wants to be successful with AI needs to have a way for people to find the right information, use the right data, get the right permissions, make sure that the data is clean, is stored, is connected. So and the decisions are made by data. So you need to have all these things in place in order to be successful with AI. Right? You don't need to have the perfect organization to start, because as I demonstrated, for example, with the pools example, you can use even external data, but it's having this culture of caring of the data and taking care of the data. Right? Sometimes I ask my customers is, do you think data is money? And everybody says yes. And then I ask them, why don't you treat data as you treat money? Right? So you have duplicated money? No. You have unclean money? No. You have isolated, siloed money? No. So try to fix those things. Really believe that data is money in order to do that. The second thing is about empowering and inclusion. And this is not about diversity in this case from people with disabilities. Now, we're talking here is AI requires people from different business units to work together in a different dimension. There's no way you can do a successful finance model without the people in finance. There's no way you can do a successful sales AI model or pricing model without the people that understand about pricing. So this is not traditional IT working with traditional department. This is something that is blended, that has to be cross and inclusive. And that's how you need to make sure that every organization feels empowered to use AI, right? So think about it this way. AI reminds me a lot of the PC era, right? You cannot imagine one single central department deciding who's going to have a PC, right? So this is the same. Everybody going to have a PC. You need someone like this central IT department that is going to coordinate, but it's a given that everybody will have the tool, right? So this is going to be the same with AI. And finally, organizations that are successful with AI are organizations that are responsibly using AI. I will cover this more in detail later. There is one more attribute that makes companies successful with AI, which is a strong leadership support. AI is not a bottom-up is in many cases top down, right? And why is this? First, because of the investments. Second, because of this fear. Third, because of the power, how powerful it is. We really need to have the leadership buying and having this strategy and betting and making this possible. The good news is that we can use some good change management approaches to help our customers going through this journey. Actually, this is a third-party, well-known change management model, ProSci, that applies really, really well to AI projects. We've seen numerous AI projects failing because not having this into account. Because people need to go through these phases of change. People need to have an awareness of what AI can do, have desire to use AI tools, the knowledge and the ability to use it, and we need this reinforcement and this going back to understand how things are working. But the good news is that leaders in the organizations have very powerful tools, communication tools, sponsorship, coaching, training, resistance management tools that need to be into account in order to make this happen. We've seen, for example, important financial services customer that they did a project, an AI project, to help their people on the branches to anticipate what is the next best action for the customer. What is the customer going to demand? It's going to demand a loan. It's going to demand a pension fund. It's going to demand a mortgage. So they created this AI model that can help people in the branches that were customer facing to have that knowledge in advance. Huge disaster. Why was a disaster? Was because the AI model was not good? No, actually the AI model was very good. It was a disaster because they did not include that people. They did not coach these people. They did not train the people. They did not generate the design from the people that are going to be using the tool, and they didn't really deal with the resistance. So there was a very negative reaction to the tool, and a lot of people say, no, AI doesn't know my customers as I know the customers. I know I'm going to be using this tool, etc. They repeated the process, including them since the beginning, and going through these phases of change management, and that they're very happy using the tool. So these are the kind of things we want to avoid in the learnings. We actually, Microsoft, went through a number of these projects and these processes, and I want to share with you a couple of them. One that I like in particular is our finance department. We have a very visionary CFO that immediately had the vision that this can really be very impactful. And it's very interesting listening to her. We have her on the AI Business School and understand how her team goes through the process. And in this case, our finance department, which is using AI extensively these days, especially for financial forecasting, for dealing with providers, for doing a significant number of use cases, they started by generating the awareness and, more importantly, generating the desire. When people from finance understood that AI could really alleviate them and help them with a very tedious and terrible process, but like for them was financial forecasting, that generated the right energy. Right? Then they work very closely with data scientists. They work in a very good way in order to be successful. It's all very well documented online. And at the end of the day, it was a huge success. Another example, Microsoft, was our customer service department. And this was also a big failure at the beginning. And when we interview them, and you hear them speaking this also online, and how they made a very similar mistake that this financial services company I was referring to. They actually created the model. They did all those things without being inclusive with the people that are going to be using it, and without communicating them something as important as, we're not going to fire you. This is not going to replace you. This is just going to make you better in your job, right? They had to restart the process again in order to be successful. So this resistance management and these coaching things that I'm highlighting here were absolutely key in order to do that. This is a very interesting project. As I said, we have this in more detail online, and it's also very interesting from my personal point of view, because there's a lot of people think about these tools in customer service environment as a way to lower cost and to reduce personnel. This is very interesting to see that the focus here is customer service, and is improving the experience for our customers and making our people better agents. So the AI tool is helping them understand the problems, is trying to anticipate what the customers want, is looking into the databases, is helping constantly the agent being more agile, but it's also being used to understand similar problems when we were successful, when we were not successful, and the AI is helping coaching and helping the agents getting better in their jobs and doing their jobs better. It's a very interesting cultural change. As I was saying, the other pillar for our Microsoft AI view is, and the third pillar on AI Business School, and the third pillar in order to be successful with AI is doing AI in a responsible way. This means different things for different companies, but all has some common grounds. On our journey, we started with some principles, which I'm going to cover now. Then we move into some practices. Then we put these principles into practice, and finally we recognize that there is also a need for specific tools and things in the organization which make this very, very real. I'm going to go through this journey. I'm going to explain you how we went through that, and our mistakes and the things that work for us. But in order to do that, first, let me start with our principles. So, and these are ours. This is Microsoft ones, and not everybody needs to have the same principles. You might have better principles than ours. You can have some more personal, some things that are more targeted to your organization, to your charter, or whatever is your vision, right? In our case, we think that AI needs to have these things into account. The first one is fairness. We want our AI models and our AI technologies to treat everybody fairly, right? That sounds easy, but it's not always easy, because if, for example, we're going to use this for our search capabilities, or we're going to help our customers, for example, doing a loan. Right, we want to make sure that this customer that is using our AI technology to accelerate lending process, it treats women and men in an equal way. We had this project with a financial service institution. We took all the traditional data points and all the information about the lending process. We generated an AI model, and that model turned out to be male biased. They was giving more loans to male than to female. Why was that? Because the data that was used to feed the model was already biased. But we need to make sure that we prevent those things, we identify those things, and we make sure that at the end of the day, AI doesn't make the same mistakes we've done in the past. Second point for us is reliability and safety, right? So we think that we need to make sure that our models operate in a reliable, safely, and consistent way, right? And this is very important in environments like, for example, in mining, or where an AI model might affect directly the safety of an operator, right? And in this case, we work with some customers, and we're working in factories, we're working in multiple areas in which to make sure that AI is not failing and AI is secure, right? We also made some mistakes as always, but that's how we learn, right? Third pillar for us is privacy and security, right? And we need to make sure that the information is protected, right, and resist attacks. We, for example, launched a bot in the US. You can look it in the news. It was a big failure, and it was a failure in 24 hours, because this was a bot that was capable of learning. But some people immediately understood how they could teach the wrong things to this bot. And this bot that started being a very nice person suffered these attacks and became a very nasty personality, being not treating people properly, right? This is an example of why we need to make sure that these things are secure and take care of privacy. The next pillar for us is inclusiveness. We see that AI provides a tremendous opportunity to empower everyone and engage people. I mentioned that from the cultural perspective and how we be part of the organization together, but we think it's a great opportunity to do things differently. We work, for example, with the Department of Human Services in Australia. That was a very interesting opportunity because they wanted to, because they were getting a lot of calls on the phone to address health issues. They decided to create a bot experience for their customers to have more channels and be able to provide a better service. But they say, okay, let's prioritize those customers that have a hard time getting into the phone because they have hearing problems, because they have different disabilities, right? And it was a very nice experience, which actually they learn a lot on creating this bot optimized for people with disabilities, has really proven to be very, very successful. Next one is transparency. Transparency is key when you talk about AI, because sometimes this, so for example, the model I was showing before of the pools, why the AI know that this is a swimming pool is not always easy to explain why is that happening. So embedding transparency in these models, especially in some cases, could be super important. We actually work with a medical institution to do a project for to identify cardiovascular diseases, right? And we were showing good results, but in some cases very weird data points. And so we embedded a lot of explainability tools within the model, and we were able to determine what were the factors and the reasons behind those diagnoses. And then we captured things that were wrong, and then we were able to improve the models because we were missing data, because the data was not applicable to the same population that we used the model, etc. Right. So this is a very important principle as well. But to be honest, if I need to be a personal one, I will pick accountability, right? A lot of the ethical considerations, a lot of the challenging considerations, right, are, for me, have a very different light and very different understanding when you look with the lenses of accountability. So we're hearing all those things about, for example, these autonomous cars. What happens if a car needs to make the decision between saving the passenger or saving someone outside and things like that? So there's a lot of complex scenarios. Well, when you think about accountability, a lot of these things take a very different approach. So who is accountable, right? Starting from the person that created the AI model to the person that created the car, that the person that owns the car, that has the ability to make decisions, right? So that's where we need to put and understand who is accountable, okay, and keep the humans in the loop in order to make sure that the systems are responsible. As I said, this was our starting point, but then immediately we realized, okay, we need to have a way to ensure that those principles are put in practice, right? And then we have our model. We discussed this model in depth online. You can take a look at that. You need to find which approach is best suited for your organization. In some cases, you might want to have an ethics office or ethics committee or chief officer. So there's no a single response in order to do that. But it's true that the more models you have, the more exposure you have to these challenges that I was saying before, the more important is that you have some ways in your organization to secure that you're using AI in a responsible way. But also not because of the internal aspects of that, it's also the external aspects of this. And this is also very important because you might have, so in the case of this lending company, this bank account, this financial service company, you might want to explain your customers how you're using AI what are the implications, how your models are being done. You might want to find partnerships. You might want to influence policymakers, help advancements in legislation. So you might have a role to play outside your organization from responsible AI perspective. And finally, as I said, okay, and think about it this way. So we can go and talk to an engineer and say, yeah, you need to be fair. That's good. We agree. And then we say, and if you're not fair, we're going to have this governance in place to ensure that you're fair. But then the engineer at the end of the day, we're going to say, yes, but can you help me being fair? So we're working on a number of tools, and we have released a number of tools, and there's third-party tools, and there's a variety of possibilities, and here listed on the screen some of the existing technologies that at the end of the day your organization can use in order to be secure, fair, transparent, etc. For example, let me call up a couple of this. Interpret ML. Interpret ML is a set of tools that you can embed into your models that will help afterwards explaining what's going behind the scene and understanding and making the model more interpretable. Right? Or, for example, we are working in a technology that's called homomorphic encryption, which is available in open source, to help running AI models with encrypted data, which is a scenario that could be very interesting when the owner of the model is different than the owner of the data, for example, right? And a number of technologies. I mean, you're feel free to look to our extensive documentation on the AI Business School online, or just look for some of these technologies on your own. But for Microsoft, this responsible AI pillar has one additional component, which is fundamental for us, which is leveraging this technology in a way that we contribute to societal changes. We think AI has tremendous potential for good. And we actually have launched 5 programs to accelerate and help different non-profits, organizations, governments, healthcare organizations to use AI for good. We have a program for AI for accessibility, targeted for helping people with disabilities. Another one, AI for health, which is more focused on sustainability. Third one for humanitarian action with minorities, people facing significant humanitarian challenges. Another one for cultural change, cultural heritage, to help organizations that are protecting our legacy in order to make sure that AI helps on that. And recently, an AI for health program, which is being very active these days, as you can imagine. What I would like to do now is go back and finish with another demo. Okay, this is the demo of an AI for Good initiative in place. This is one of the grantees that has received grant from one of this AI for Earth programs. And for me, it's a really good way to wrap up and show you a lot of these things fit together, right? In this case, this company, what they do is that they look after a species in danger. And for them, the main bottleneck is having more people doing observations of species in danger. There's a huge number of species in danger. World is huge, right? So the question is, how can we do, and is there a way we can use AI to expand our capabilities of monitoring, detecting, and understanding the species? So they say, okay, what if we turn every observer there into a scientific for us? So in this case, what you see is a Facebook post of a video in Spanish that is capture a whale shark. Okay, so you see that's a fantastic video with the whale shark, right? So what they use, this company using AI to do a number of things. They detect the language. You see, they can translate the language. They do some analysis and prediction to see if they're talking about species in dangers. They look at the video. They extract the video frames. They do object detection, right? Then they also extract the text. And then they try to determine where and when. There is no good observation if you cannot say this is the species in danger and this is where we see and when, right? In this case, they didn't manage to do this yet, you will see. Next, what they try to do is they're using one of these deep learning models to even identify which is the right individual. Because each species in danger has individual patterns, as we have. It's just like the equivalent to our face recognition. So they can identify which is the particular individual within this species that is actually have this particular pattern, right? And it's very likely that this individual H019 is the one that is in the video. So actually, I can post a reply and can ask where and when, right, and get that information, right, and then post them a response to say, well, you know, the individual that you've seen is this individual. So the user, the casual observer now can see that actually the whale shark that they observed was John Cena. It was a male. And they can see information about who is traveling. This is the social network of John Cena. And they can also take a look at, for example, where has been observed, where the migration patterns, etc. So I think it's a great way to wrap up and finish, to see how going back again to how he started talking about this meaningful innovation. That's innovation that was not easy to adopt. How thinking about AI from a strategic perspective, and how adapting it from a cultural perspective, and using it with responsibility has the potential to really change the world and your organization. I really encourage you to go to a business school online, where you can find all this and more case studies, videos, practical guides, and all the details on the things that I had been sharing today, and more information that might be helpful for you. Once again, thank you so much. Hopefully this was useful, and now we will be taking some questions and hopefully answering them. Thank you.